Origin Jazz Home UX, and this is Russia suffers major defeat in Kursk. Air Force crippled overnight. What? This is the channel The Enforcer. You might be thinking, why am I making so much video about this? Because this is literally updates. I said yesterday or something like that, I want to see when Russia reaches Ukraine, like actual battle starts. Because so far it's been Ukraine just taking over places, Russia not responding much. But like they did divert troops there. So I did say like I want to see what happens there. Like this is gonna give you the lay of the land, like how's gonna play out. Russia actually got defeated. Ukraine kicked out Russia. Oh, this is so big. You have no idea how big that is, right? That is insane, right? That's something that you can't believe. Like, okay, imagine 10 years ago somebody told you like Ukraine is gonna invade Russia, and Russia actually losing during the invasion. Like Ukraine, imagine that, right? I mean, that's the feel I'm getting from this title. I don't know what happened yet, right? Russia has suffered a major defeat overnight as Ukrainian forces took more settlements in rapid advances. Oh my God. Look, first of all, I'm just gonna say warning or disclaimer. I don't like wars, right? I'm not taking anyone's sides. I'm not in anyone's favor. I'm in the favor of no war. And so since Russia started this war, I don't like that, right? Russia is a strategic partner of India, right? And like I always like respected Russia because of that, right? Russia helped out India when nobody was there. But I don't like the recent thing that's been going on. Russia just suddenly started war, and it's not just that. It's not just Russia and Ukraine. It started this, dominoes effect, right? Other wars are starting because of it. Same thing I'm fearing if Russia used nukes now, because Russia does have nukes, the largest supply there is, right? How many of them function, who knows, but enough are gonna be functional. There's gonna be a problem. So if Russia used tactical nukes, that's gonna be a problem, which means anybody else will like, okay, if Russia did it, I can do it as well. Another dominoes effect, which is not good. Nuke is one thing that should never be touched with, regardless of what. Everything else you can basically play out eventually, this and that. Nukes is like we are done after that, right? That's the Fallout game. That's Fallout game's intro, basically. That should never happen. So Russia's special military operation, I don't agree with that. Since the day when I said that, I don't agree with that. Like it should always be diplomatic channel. Even India's position, prime minister and like foreign minister's position is like always do this through diplomatic channels. So I don't like wars. Who the fuck likes war? Like, who's gonna say, oh, I like war? That's insane. I don't like war. So most people are in the favor of Ukraine because of this reason, because Russia is the one who started it. Now, but seeing this is insane through historical reasons and like economical and power reasons, right? Like, how is Russia getting defeated, right? I don't know. This is gonna be an interesting video. Let's watch it. Remember, if you like my reaction, don't forget to subscribe. So I know which type of videos to react to more. Check out the reaction, this link is in. Check out the end card, and let's watch it.
Hello everyone, I am the Enforcer, and welcome to the breaking news. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and support us on Patreon, link in the description below. Today's breaking news is that Ukraine has been conducting major attacks on Russian airfields deep inside of Russia and also within the area of Voronezh, and we've also been able to hear the Ukrainian armed forces have continued to make massive advances in the Kursk Oblast today, and we've also seen that Russian helicopters were destroying Russian forces in a fairly significant friendly fire incident that were trying to retreat away from the Ukrainian front lines at this moment. We have a huge amount of news, and starting off with our first and most major bit of news today, we were able to hear huge amount of news, and starting off with our first.
Oh yeah, people told me that Ukraine is not advancing toward Moscow. It makes sense. Yeah, basically it's going this direction, but Moscow is there. That makes sense. Somebody told me in the comments like Ukrainian forces are at the end of the highway that directly connects to like Moscow or something like that. There was some strategic thing or meant something or something. That's why I'm like, okay, are they going to go to Moscow now? But no, they're like taking over this place. Again, many experts and like channels like Task and Purpose and like big people with enough information and multi-million subscribers said like, it's unlikely Ukraine's going to gain any land. And I'm like, everything that's been happening so far is unpredictable. Nobody could predict this shit. Literally no one. I said that, like 36 hours ago or something, whenever I posted last video. And look at this shit. Oh, unlikely Ukraine is not going to gain any more ground. They did. Of course they did. It's all unpredictable. You can't predict this shit. Who knows what's going to happen next?
First and most major bit of news today, we were able to hear that a Russian airfield at Savaslika was hit by Ukrainian drones and appears to have been heavily damaged, or some MiG-31s based at the airfield may have been destroyed as well. Well, you see one of the explosions right here on the airfield. This is actually one of the paddocks where the MiG-31s are kept, and we're going to play this footage again. We cannot tell if this drone hit directly on top of a MiG-31 or if it exploded in between.
Okay, I don't know if I could show this or like even make you hear watch the original video. I guess I don't know why. Is it because I'm smaller channel, YouTube comes after me harder or something? But I always have to like blur shit out, and like otherwise YouTube's like, oh, restricted, age restricted, nobody can watch it, this country can watch it, like what the hell. So this, like, you can, if I had to mute this clip, like go watch the original one, but you see that hitting that like clank 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 clank, like ricochet sound of bullets. Anybody with OCD, like even mild OCD, that would be too, like how would you function as a soldier? Because you'd be like, oh my god, that ricochet could kill me. You're constantly thinking that, ricocheting this bullet. If like some kind of a dirt or like small stone flies away because somebody just drive car fast, people panic. This is bullets are ricocheting. This is insane.
Two of them, but it does appear that this airfield came under very significant attack, and it also seems as though some of the MiG-31s may have been damaged. We can also see another clip right here showing the attack from another angle. You hear the drone going over.
That's a drone?
Towards the airfield, where it'll then end up striking the MiG-31s. The MiG-31...
That's a drone? I mean, yeah, big-ass military drone, but it sounds like a plane. But then again, why would the modern planes have propellers on them? So if you hear propeller, it's probably a drone, which is like, isn't that terrifying? Isn't that something, right? Two years ago, Ukrainians were constantly like afraid and hiding and scared. And nobody would even think like, like side's gonna be flipped over like this. Now this is the opposite side, right? I mean, I'm sure like, I don't know how accurate the poll was, but poll showed like, like what, 50-60% or something like that, like agrees with the special operation. I don't know, because they don't know what's happening, or they just agree with it. Will they agree with it now? That's what I'm thinking, after hearing all these things in their own sky. That's insane.
Are a fairly older interceptor of the Soviet Union, but they still do pack a little bit of a punch, at least in some sort of niche roles in modern air combat nowadays.
I mean, it's a drone. It's like saying old gun, like old 38 revolver is deadly. Yeah, it's still a gun. This is still a drone. I mean, it's gonna be deadly. I mean, only way technology come in the way if there are defenses to take down the drone. Maybe then the like old drone might be a problem. Damage wise, it's still a drone.
To give you all an idea of what a MiG-31 looks like, this is the MiG-31 right here. This is actually a picture of one of them. The MiG-31 has been used in the war in a very limited role as the MiG-31K, which has been used to fire off Kinzhal hypersonic missiles at some points throughout the war in Ukraine. We've never seen the true bred...
I don't know if it's this one or what, but I'm pretty sure India has that one, right? Before India replaced that with Rafales. Or was it MiG-20, 720 or 20 series something? I don't know. I'm pretty sure it was MiG-31s and India still have them. It's supposed to be like modern-ish version of it. I don't know. But yeah, it's gonna be decent. It's not like really old MiG-25s or MiG-21 type of thing. It's gonna be like decent, I guess.
The interceptor version ever really being used against Ukrainian forces, considering that it's purely a air fighter or some sort of a fighter aircraft meant to intercept bombers at high altitudes and destroy them before they can make it into Russian airspace. We've never really seen these used much. We're not really sure if the aircraft at this airfield...
Wait a minute, what is happening? What the fuck is happening? They have these interceptor planes and somehow F-16s are still being used to help this incursion. Why didn't they use interceptor to intercept F-16s? Why didn't they use like long-range missiles that they can take out F-16, which like Russia has all this technology, right? It's always like whatever US comes up with, Russia has come somewhat, equal to that. I don't know, equal to that or close to that, right? People always say like, does that work? What is that, like question marks? But Russia still have this technology. They always sell it to the world, India and every other place. Why didn't they use that missile and interceptor from the distance to take it out? Where are the Su-57? There must be some of them, at least few. They can't use that for this incursion or something. How is F-16 still like helping in this type of way, right? You think major power like Russia, it's not easy to use like older jets or something, but apparently it is. How is F-16 successful? Again, there are no actual reports of it. People are speculating, but speculation does come from somewhat truth, I guess, right? in all what is it called, in all rumors there is some kind of fact there.
Or MiG-31s or MiG-31Ks that have been modified to carry a Kinzhal hypersonic missile. Nevertheless, the attack happened very deep inside of Russia, actually beyond Moscow itself, near to Nizhny Novgorod, and it does seem as though, at least based off the videos we have so far, we are expecting some kind of significant damage has most likely occurred at that airfield. Meanwhile, in Voronezh, we also got to see that the airbase on the southern end of the city of Voronezh, the Baltimore airbase...
Hold up there. Are they trying to cut off Russia from like Crimea and I mean not cut off but cut off Moscow? If they cut line from here, right, try to take over this place, Moscow's line is cut to the southern area. That must cause issues, right? Are they trying to do that? I don't know.
Some kind of significant damage has most likely occurred at that airfield. Meanwhile, in Voronezh, we also got to see that the airbase on the southern end of the city of Voronezh, the Baltimore airbase, was also hit as well. We covered this a little bit last night because we were getting preliminary information. We were able to confirm that it was the Baltimore airbase at the southern end of Voronezh, and it does seem as though some Russian aircraft were hit because as the night went on, the fires continued to rage, showing that some sort of fuel-based component or ammunition, most likely fuel, was hit and it was beginning to burn throughout the night. From what we know, the fire has not been put out at this moment, and we haven't been able to get an exact damage assessment, but we are assuming that basic facilities at the airbase may have been knocked out, or some aircraft may have been hit and destroyed. Once again, the air campaign that Ukraine is conducting against the Russian Air Force appears to be going fairly well, and it also is at a perfect time. The Ukrainians are trying to conduct their offensive in Kursk at this moment, and are continuing to make ground and continuing to take Russian prisoners as of right now. The Russian Air Force is attempting to slow the Ukrainians' advance while more Russian forces try and enter the area by largely just bombing the Ukrainians into oblivion, if that's possible. That requires the Russians to be able to get these aircraft in the air and flying, and to have air...
Yeah, I think that's possible. If Russia want to do that with artillery and shit, they can just bombard the place. But what about their own civilians? It's their city. It's their place. It's going to be interesting what Russia do as a tactic. Will Russia try to minimize damage and try to defend things, or just like screw it, like just slow down Ukraine any means necessary type of way? Because everything that is happening so far is so unpredictable. I don't know what's gonna happen. I'm not gonna lie. Future is so weird. Past 60-70 years will feel like some kind of a like distant mirage. Because everything we thought, this modern world shit like this doesn't happen. Human violence, human right violation doesn't happen. Geneva Convention violation doesn't happen. What if that becomes like a distant memory? When it comes to war, people just like, like in war, people just like do whatever is necessary type of shit. So I don't know what's going to happen in the future. It's fucked up.
Aircraft to conduct these missions. And so far we can see that Ukraine is trying to deprive the Russians of the ability to conduct these missions and get aircraft in the air, and they're also trying to deprive the Russians of the aircraft that eventually would get into the air if they were able to be fueled and armed correctly at their airfields. We also got to hear that those efforts aren't just staying inside of the Russian air bases that Ukraine is attacking. We also got to hear that a Russian Su-34 fighter bomber, most likely from an airbase around Voronezh, was shot down today. This is a picture of just any random Su-34. This isn't a picture of the one that was shot down, but we were able to get confirmation from the Ukrainian Armed Forces that a Russian Su-34 was in fact shot down, and this is a fairly big deal. It's actually a massive deal for the Ukrainians because it is showing that they have a heavy amount of air defense in this area. Su-34 fighter bombers are very rarely used at this point in the war as close air support aircraft. We never see that anymore. Usually the Su-34 is used as a standoff aircraft meant to drop glide bombs at a considerable range. We are assuming that this Su-34 was trying to do the same thing, dropping glide bombs at incredibly long distances at a high altitude, and somehow the Ukrainians have an air defense system in the area that was able to engage the Su-34 and shoot it down. This gives us a very good idea that the Ukrainians have a very advanced and very dangerous anti-air system in the area, most likely a Patriot of some sort, maybe using a PAC-2 missile, which has a range of about 110 miles, or the PAC-3, which has a range of about 80 miles or so, at least according to the public numbers. Nevertheless, this is, once again, a massive step forward for Ukraine. It's showing that this offensive effort in Kursk is not skimping on any sort of specialized roles that this unit, well, that this group would need. They have anti-tank, they have armor, they have, of course, infantry, they have artillery, and they also have anti-air artillery as well. They are doing wildly well at making sure to cover all of their bases and make it incredibly difficult for the Russians to actually put a dent into the Ukrainians that are continuing to advance through Kursk at this moment. And advance they are, as we did get news today that Ukrainian forces have captured the town of Byakovo, and we were able to get footage of them throwing a flag off the top of the building from what we understand to be the House of
Alright, I don't get it. Is this some kind of an app or something? Or did he like created this kind of like map and sticky notes that leads to these links? Or is there some kind of website that like keep tracks of things? If you click it, it'll show some kind of clip like this. I think it's the first one, right? He probably compiled all this.
Culture of this small town. And we could see the Ukrainian up there take the Russian flag and fling it right off the building down to the ground, where the other Ukrainian soldiers were watching, and this does confirm that the town has been captured. This does seem to be a part of the Ukrainian Reka River campaign, as we're going to be calling it.
What is this, just cause 3? Every time you capture a town, you change the flag?
Or the Reka River advance, which either way you want to call it, doesn't really matter. But it seems as though the Ukrainians are advancing from the area of Snegost, south of the Reka River, through Glishkovo, and up to the area of Tetkino, trying to capture this entire area, and also ensure that this area will be very hard for the Russians to recapture, because the Reka River will serve as a natural defensive barrier for the Ukrainians on the southern side of the river. This seems to be the case, as we are seeing that the Ukrainians are slowly making their way westwards and back towards the Ukrainian border near Tetkino, and it seems as though the Russians are maybe realizing this and maybe figuring out that this is a very tough situation, especially if the Glishkovo River Bridge over the Reka ends up being destroyed. We could see that the Russians will be in a perilous situation at that point. They probably will not be able to effect a proper defense in this area, and a large amount of Russians that are south of the Reka River will most likely end up having to surrender. But moving on from that and towards Lyubomovka, we did get to see the Ukrainians also removing a Russian flag from a building inside of this town as well. And when you see that this is another house of culture, it says Dom Kulturi, which is something like house culture or culture house. So this is another house of culture, and we can see them removing the Russian flag from this one as well, much like they did in the last village we just showed. You see him continuing to try and pull the flag out of the flagpole holding area. We could hear the distant boom of artillery showing that there is an active battle going on somewhere miles away. We see the flag of the Russian Federation flutter to the ground, falling right in front of the House of Culture. Once again showing that the Ukrainians have captured the town. And that's the end of that clip, but still showing the Ukrainians are continuing to expand their control, and they're making it very clear that the Russian Federation has been defeated within this area. Meanwhile, Ukraine did take more prisoners. We were able to hear that an additional group of prisoners was taken this morning by the 80th Air Mobile Brigade, a lighter brigade, most likely a motorized brigade, and our first motorized brigade that we've ever seen on the roster. The Korn unit, which is filming this, is a part of the 116th Brigade, which is a mechanized brigade. However, the 80th Air Assault is most likely falling within the category of a motorized brigade. An air mobile brigade is usually a very light force that is lightly equipped, and they're meant entirely to rapidly advance into forward areas and then try and hold them until the larger forces can eventually arrive and relieve them. But still, it is showing that the Russian Federation is not putting up that good of a resistance. Ukrainian forces are continuing to advance through areas of the Kursk region, and not only that, a large amount of Russians are still continuing to surrender, much like we saw in that footage of the 80th Air Assault Brigade. Things appear to be going quite well overall, and to give a little bit of a frontline wide perspective in this area, the Ukrainians seem to be meeting...
God, why take the places like this and leave the center one alone? I guess these are the key points or something?
Some Russian resistance at this point, but the Russian Federation is not posing the kind of resistance that would have been expected based off of the public statements that some propagandists have been making, saying that the Russian Federation has a large amount of combat reserves. It's just that they're trying to toy with the Ukrainians. The reality is that they don't really have a lot of reserves at all, and we can certainly see this.
Come on, man. How could you believe that? Doesn't matter who you are, right? By this point, it's like too much players have been lost. Any attack on Russia, like any invasion on Russia, was too much of a slap in the face for a major country, right? Imagine if somebody suddenly like, I don't know, invades China or invades India and like takes a lot of states in modern world. USA, I can't even talk about USA. That would never happen in a million years because of the geography and everything. But I don't know what other big country you can think of. Like think of like a major power of the world where actual war happened and a lot of states are like getting lost, right? Where like army is progressing in this modern world. This is like that. This is happening to Russia, which is like if they had reserve, they should have used it instantly as soon as they heard like invasion is happening. Because the longer this goes on, the more territory Ukraine takes in, that's even more like historical damage, right? People will remember this.
Right now, because they're trying to find a way at the moment to plug the gap pretty much inside of Kursk and stop the Ukrainians from further advancing. And that's even further complicated because of the complete lack of morale by the Russian armed forces that are trying to defend the area. And we've seen
I don't get that point, right? I don't get that point. I've seen the clips of like Russians just like giving up, putting their weapons down. I don't know why. Understand like people's morale might be lowered, but when they attacked Ukraine, understand like they were like, why are we doing this? Morale is low. Right now their own country is under attack. They are in the defensive right now. They are the one who's getting invaded. Shouldn't be there some form of motivation like this is my country? I have to like, whether I agree with this or not, I have to defend my country. Why is there no motivation even when they are getting attacked?
Up with catastrophic results today as the Russians ended up conducting a pretty bad moment of friendly fire. The Russians posted this on Telegram here, saying that they had ended up destroying a Ukrainian advancing column, from what we understand. And it was not an advancing Ukrainian column, it was actually a destroyed Russian column. You see, what had happened was that the Russians in this area, we're believing that this was around Kromsky-Byky, were apparently getting beat pretty badly, and so they decided to fall back to a more advantageous defensive position. The trunk started traveling north towards Lvov, and let me show y'all what we're looking at here on this map so that way I can explain this a little bit better. So here's Kromsky-Byky, if I can find it. And so let's see here. Here's Sudza down here, and so Kromsky-Byky is right here. And from what we know, they were traveling on the road from Kromsky-Byky up towards Lvov. Now, many of y'all will also know that the Ukrainian army is advancing north from Kromsky-Byky and towards Lvov. And so it's not out of the question that if anyone was moving north at this point, it would be the Ukrainians. And so a Russian Mi-28 spotted the Russian column that was moving north towards Lvov. It was retreating, and they opened fire on them and ended up destroying all of the vehicles in the convoy. The rest of the Russians shattered under the attack and ended up just fleeing into the fields nearby. And the Russians practically destroyed their own forces in the retreat with the Mi-28. This is something else that I want to point out is pretty wild as a matter of fact, because the thing is that you could view this another way, and it could almost look like the Russians used the Mi-28 as a blocking force and stopped the Russian forces from retreating and destroyed them for cowardice, although that's not really the case. It was a case of friendly fire through and through. But it is once again showing that the Russians are not making that good of a defensive effort, and on top of that, their coordination with the ground forces and the rotary wing air forces doesn't really look that well, because the Russian helicopter assumed that these guys were enemy forces, ended up firing on them and killing their own people for the large part, so not really that good of.
Oh my god, that is such a fucked up scenario. This like cherry on all top of all this bullshit. That is insane. Like if they didn't know, like imagine that, like wait, by the way, we just destroyed our own thing. Imagine that kind of mentality. And like I don't like that thing. Like, okay, if anybody's going north, it must be Ukrainian. Why? It might be one of your people retreating because there are Ukrainians there. In the battlefield, when somebody comes towards you, it doesn't necessarily mean it's an enemy. It could be one of your people retreating. That is common sense. It always happens. It happens in the battlefield with the army. In no man's land, it happens, right? It's like somebody's retreating. Who is that? That's why you check for colors and signs. They don't have radios. This is modern world. I don't know. Why isn't there like some kind of a cell phone or something with a speed dial that can connect to the like control tower or some shit of military, like, oh, this is us, don't fire, some shit, there's a helicopter there, this is us. How can you not communicate in the modern times? Only thing that has been modernized in like past 20-30 years at big level is communication and information. Entire internet is information. Communication is the big thing. Everything else is moving very slowly. Communication and information transfer is the new age thing. How do you not have means to communicate? That doesn't make sense to me. This is not still 1940s or something, or 1960s or whatever. This is in modern world. You don't have means to communicate. How are you making this kind of mistake? How is somebody like, oh, this is us, don't shoot?
Of a deal, but once again, it's Russia. What can you expect? That's kind of the thing that comes with fighting the Russians, is that they end up committing a large amount of friendly fire due to poor communication and training. But once again, showing us that the Russians are doing quite badly, and apparently so badly, they couldn't even believe that that was their own forces retreating north towards Lvov. Moving on from that, though, and moving on out of the area and on over into Western Europe, we also got some very interesting news today from this area as well, as we were able to hear that 2 air bases inside of Germany have been put on lockdown after suspected attempts of sabotage. Investigators believe the water supply of the German air base in Cologne 1 and the NATO air base at Gillenkirchen, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, have been contaminated, and signs of poisoning have begun to appear. It does seem as though this may be a Russian-backed form of sabotage or espionage at the moment. We don't really know for sure. Investigators are still...
What the hell? Your country's under attack and you're worried about Germany? Are they trying to stop new equipment? Because this is not the time to look outwards. Right now you're under attack. Focus on that. Maybe they're trying to cut off supply lines. Germany is supplying Ukraine. That's like, how is that going to stop Germany supplying? If anything, that would piss off Germany more, wouldn't it? Like, how did you cut off the supply? I don't get it. Like, focus on your own country. Ukraine is like making advances. What happened to all your equipment? What happened to all your like jets and like weapons? All your technologies? Why are you not using that? Where are your soldiers? This is insane, man. This is like, yeah. I don't know. There you go, people. Like I said that, right? Like I said that, like we don't know anything, right? People are speculating the more advances is unlikely. Apparently not. Ukraine is still advancing, which is like, okay, seriously, right? Stop thinking about like who you're sided with or not. Are you siding with Russia? Are you siding with Ukraine? Just stop thinking about all that. 10 years ago, would you have believed if somebody said Ukraine is gonna invade Russia? And not just that, they're gonna keep making gains for days before Russia does anything, or Russia can even be successful. Would you have believed that? This is an insane news, right? For decades, for multiple decades, right? Russia always had this like top 2 power image alongside USA. And now Ukraine is invading Russia, right? I mean, past 2-3 years, maybe Russia's resources have been drying up a lot because of the war, because they miscalculated. They thought they're going to win faster. They didn't. World has been supplying Ukraine, but that's not the case with Russia. So maybe Russia is drying out on resources, and that is catching up right now. Maybe that's why Ukraine attacked Russia now, because they knew Russia doesn't have resources or manpower to do anything about it or something like that. I don't know. This was like a surprise attack type of way, right? I don't know. Alright, well, that was Russia suffers major defeat in Kursk. What's gonna happen next? I don't know. I'm gonna keep checking this channel, Enforcer, like what happens next, but I don't know. If you like my next one, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.